That's why I support the creation of a consumer agency to help protect average citizens and reality stars alike. A consumer agency will stop banks and credit card companies from being such sleazy jerks. Call your senator and tell them to hold big Wall Street banks accountable and to fight for strong consumer protection.
Okay, so why does this proposed consumer watchdog agency need Heidi's help? Because Senator Chris Dodd, the Democrat in charge of the Banking Committee, is working on a financial reform compromise with Republican Senator Bob Corker. And Senator Corker said on the record going into those negotiations that he could not support a standalone consumer financial protection agency. In other words, Senator Dodd is very likely whittling away at the consumer agency to try to bring Corker on board. And the best evidence yet that that's what's going on? News from Senator Corker today that they've almost reached a deal on the agency. Here, for your viewing pleasure, is his warm-up victory lap on CNBC today.
I don't think we ought to try to pass legislation that solves every problem in the world. I think when we do that, we end up with things like is happening right now with health care reforms.
In fact, the financial reform debate is a lot like health care reform debate, but not for the reason Bob Corker says. Here's the real analogy. The Consumer Financial Protection Agency is the new public option. Both the public option and the consumer agency would have meant major changes for a major industry. And both industries have half-heartedly pretended to support reform in theory, but often fought tooth and nail against it. And both industries focused the fight on that one piece of reform that would have meant a new source of power over them, something independent and something they couldn't subvert. And so far, in both cases, it's looking kind of like Democrats are going to cave. Joining us now is Heather McGhee. She is director of the Washington office of Demos, a nonpartisan research and advocacy group. Heather, thanks so much for coming to the show.
Thanks, Chris, for having me.
So an independent agency to protect consumers seems like a very popular idea. Why would Republicans be fighting against it? And maybe more perplexingly, why would Democrats want to abandon it?
I'll take the easy one first. I really think that it's very popular. 75% of Americans recognize that the banks and the payday lenders have been gouging them for years as the federal government has looked the other way, and really support a strong, independent consumer financial protection agency. We have to realize that Republicans and all people in Congress have more than one set of constituents. They have the voters who are paying attention sometimes, and the donors and the lobbyists who are paying attention all the time. And they've been swarming Congress for the past year, ever since the financial crisis, trying to weaken and ultimately kill a consumer financial protection agency.
So those banks that have been trying to kill this thing, and they've been going at it with hatchets from the very beginning, what is it they're so afraid of? Why are they fighting so hard against it?
What we've seen is over the past 30 years, there's really been a really radical experiment in financial deregulation across the board. But at the consumer level, there's just a new Wild West situation out there where the banks, the payday lenders, the rent-to-own stores, the used auto dealers have just basically had very little oversight. And they've profited from that regime.
Right.
The financial crisis has absolutely shown that that was not only bad for consumers, it was bad for Wall Street, it was bad for the entire country, and they know that the jig is up unless they can beat down a consumer protection agency.
So then what is your sense, and I know that you have been working with a lot of groups on the Hill, what is your sense of where the Consumer Financial Protection Agency stands?
I think we're at a very critical point. You mentioned health care. Unfortunately, I really think that the financial reform battle has really been being waged in the shadow of health care. The American people shouldn't have to learn that there's a fight going on for their wallets from Heidi Montag and the SNL presidents, but they have. I mean, really, I think that most Americans, if they knew what the stakes were, that there was payday lenders and subprime mortgage companies on one hand and a consumer financial protection agency on the other hand, would be really outraged. But the Democrats haven't been able to take the mic and make that contrast clear. And so we've got backroom deals right now. We've really got Senator Dodd really wants to make a deal, and he's going to give away, I think, a real opportunity to make a very clear contrast and say, hey, this is what the Democratic Party stands for, and it's you and your family, your retirement savings, and your home. Republicans are trying to gut investor protections, consumer protections, They're trying to stand up for the subprime lenders and the payday lenders. I mean, this should be a very easy political fight. So I think if we can make that political fight more visible to the American people, and it's really just starting to heat up, then I think we're going to have a stronger hand to try to get this consumer agency passed.
Well, Heather, maybe we can get a Lady Gaga video on the internet in favor of the agency. Heather McGhee, Washington Director of the nonpartisan research group Demos, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Chris.
All eyes and ears were on recently resigned Congressman Eric Massa this afternoon, who made his first TV appearance since accusations of harassment were lobbed against him last week. The self-described salty old sailor appeared on Glenn Beck's show for what Beck promised to be a barn burner of an interview. Beck's idea was to give over an entire hour of his show to a man who just a day earlier seemed poised on revealing the dark, secret inner workings of the whole socialist conspiracy running the country. A man who knew where the bodies were buried, and now on live TV he was going to name names. But then things did not go quite as Beck had hoped.
Tell us what you know. Make a difference now. Pick up a shovel and show us where to throw the dirt.
So the most important thing that people can do is to get involved. I mean, it's that simple.
No.
And vote.
You are in. No.
So what? Okay, go ahead.
Please don't be a commercial.
All right.
Everybody knows that.
All right.
People, you're in. You claim that the system is corrupt. I agree with you.
Demand that we do one thing in Congress, and that's change campaign finance reform, because nothing else matters until we do that. Until we do that, nothing will change. I don't know. That to me is the #1 issue facing America today. It really is. We won't change jobs. We won't change anything until that is changed.
Beck really didn't know what to do with that. You could see his brain frying right in front of your eyes. I want names! Oh, on the left and the right, we are always looking for villains, the bad guys who are screwing people over or screwing up the country. But a lot of times the problems go much deeper than that, and the answers involve pretty boring-sounding reforms like campaign finance. As Glenn Beck might expect a dirty hippie like myself to say, it's the system, man. It's the system. Now, one of the more colorful electoral races this year, Florida Governor Charlie Crist is in a bare-knuckles primary fight for the Senate. It's a job Crist thought he had locked up a year ago. Now fast forward to March 2010, and Charlie Crist is desperate. His Republican primary challenger, Marco Rubio, leads him by more than 30 points in the latest poll. And if there's one thing we know about desperate campaigns and desperate candidates, it's that they make really stupid mistakes. Here is Crist last night taking a jab at his opponent.
He's trying to pawn himself off as a fiscal conservative, and yet, just in recent weeks, about 2 weeks ago, it's come out in news accounts that he had a Republican Party of Florida credit card that he charged a $130 haircut, or maybe it was a back wax. We're not really sure what all he got at that place.
So beyond just insinuating the hirsuteness of your opponent, is there a political point here somewhere?
Detachment from reality is stunning to me, and to try to say that you're a fiscal conservative, yet you spend $130 for maybe a haircut and maybe other things. I don't know what you do at a salon when you're a guy.
Well, you could tan there, I suppose, but how would a regular old fellow like Charlie Crist know about that?
I get my hair cut for $11 from a guy named Karl the barber in St. Petersburg, Florida, where I grew up. And, to me, that's real fiscal conservatism.
Yes, finally, someone standing up for real fiscal conservatism. Where a Senate candidate gets his hair or her haircut would be relevant if Supercuts were a federally funded program. But so long as a senator merely has to appropriate federal funds, consent to treaties, and confirm presidential appointments, Crist is probably barking up the wrong palm tree on this one. Marco Rubio is the Tea Party-approved candidate, and he is also the son of immigrants. More on why that does not compute later on in the show. And finally, even if you know nothing about hockey, you do know that Canadians love it. I mean, they really love it, and they are good at it, too. Mario Lemieux, Wayne Gretzky, and, of course, Sidney Crosby, who scored the winning goal for Canada in its incredible gold medal match against the U.S. in this year's Winter Olympics. 80% of Canadians were watching that game. 80%. And not just as casual viewers either. Pat Kiernan, a news anchor here in New York, draws our attention to a graph which shows water consumption in one Canadian city, Edmonton, during the gold medal game. Okay? So, here we have water consumption before the game, pretty straight line, and then it falls off drastically for face-off. First period ends and everyone runs to the bathroom. Oh, game is back on. Now second period ends, back to the loo. Players are back on the ice. Quick, hurry. Bathrooms in Edmonton are emptier than a Sarah Palin book signing in Berkeley. End of third period, sweet relief. The game goes into overtime, Canada wins, they get their medals, and then, once again, it's back to being an acceptable time for a bathroom break. Canadians are great at hockey, and if it were to become an Olympic sport, they would probably also be very good at synchronized you-know-whating.